So the last thing we have to talk about in this unit is circumference and area of circles. And once again, there are some definitions. Let me see if I can get a little closer here. All right. So you basically know what a circle is, but the definition is the set of all points in a plane that are the same distance from a given point called the center of the circle. All that's saying is that if I have some center point and I have some set distance away from that point, I can create a circle. That's really all that is saying. The distance around the circle, the distance across the circle is called the diameter. So again, I don't think this is anything that is completely new to you. I'm sure you have talked about diameter before. But if I have a circle and I start at one side and this is the center of my circle, if I go through the center of my circle to the other side, then that would be my diameter. So remember, a diameter always has to go through the center of the circle. The circumference of the circle is the length all the way around this circle. So remember, circumference is actually a length. It's kind of like if I took a piece of string and went all the way around a circle. So for instance, if I took my piece of string and I laid it around this outside of the circle and measured that, so about like that, it's about there. Let me cut that there. Then this length of this string would be my circumference of the circle, and I could actually take a ruler and then kind of measure the circumference of that circle. And it's just about 12 inches, a little bit, maybe a tiny bit less, but just about 12 inches. So remember, circumference is the measurement going all the way around the circle. It's a length. And the area of a circle is just like the area of any other figure that we're talking about. It would be, all of this inside. So this here would be the area of the circle, everything inside. So there are two formulas that you need to know for this. The circumference of a circle is 2 times pi times r. And remember, r is now the radius, not the diameter. So you remember when we talked about circles, we said, well, if it goes through the center of a circle all the way through, then that's the diameter. But just half of that would be the radius. So if it starts at the center of the circle and goes out, it would be the radius. And the circumference of a circle is based on the radius. Now, there's actually also another formula that you could use. The circumference is also pi times the diameter. And the reason for that is, as we saw, if I take 2 times the radius, I get the diameter. Because if you remember, right here, if I take one radius and then another radius, I actually get the diameter. So just always remember the radius is half of the diameter. But I always like to just use one formula so I don't get confused. So I tend to just use 2 pi r. And then the area of a circle is pi r squared. So remember, circumference is a length. So the units are just going to be plain old units. So like feet, inches, whatever, centimeters, right? Because it's just a length. It's like if I took my yarn and I stretched it out, I could just measure it. But area is always going to be in square units. So just like our area formulas, it's going to be units squared. So let's take a look at an example here. Here it says find the area and the circumference of a circle. Well, here they give me a circle and they tell me that this is 28 yards. So the first thing you need to decide, is this a diameter or is this a radius? Well, it goes from the beginning of the circle all the way to the other side of the circle through the center. So this is actually a diameter. Well, I know a radius is half of the diameter. So if the diameter is 28, I know the radius would be half of that, which would be 14. So now that I know that the radius is 14, that's what I'm going to use to plug into my two formulas. Now, you can keep pi as pi, so I could say circumference is 2 times pi times 14, and then all I have to do is multiply the 14 times the 2, and I'll get 28. And then the pi just kind of goes along for the ride. So I could have 28 pi. That's what we would call an exact answer because pi goes on and on forever. So if I use pi equals 3.14, that's just a little piece of the pi, if you will. So that if I substitute that in for pi, then I'm giving you an approximate answer because I'm approximating pi. So if it says leave in terms of pi, that means pi will just go on your answer. But if it says round to some decimal, then you'll just take your calculator and you'll say, can you see the calculator here? Maybe not. You'll just say 28 times 3.14, and then you would get that the circumference is what we were doing, right? Sorry. The circumference is 87.92. So it depends if they asked you to keep it in terms of pi, your answer would be 28 pi. Again, that's just units. Or if they said round to some decimal, then you would just take that and multiply it by 3.14 and you would get a decimal. So both answers are correct. It just depends on which way they ask you to leave the answer. And then let's find the area of that same circle. So my area formula, once again, is pi r squared. So I could leave this in terms of pi if I wanted to. Remember, my radius is 14. So the area would be pi times 14 squared. Again, you can go to your calculator. 14 squared is going to give you 196. So this could be 196 pi. Again, pi would just kind of go along for the ride. But now remember, this is units squared. But if they ask you to round it to some decimal, then you would say 196 and you would say 3.14 for pi. And again, let's go to our calculator. 196 times 3.14. You would get 615.44. And again, can't see that. And then that would be units squared. So this would be your answer in terms of pi, and this would be your answer if you wanted to round it to some decimal. So the biggest thing about area and circumference is, remember, you need to use your radius, not the diameter. If you have any questions, let me know.